Okay, what's going on, everybody? My name is Mangg. Welcome back to Hanging with Mangg. And today we're playing little Final Fantasy Tactics. This is the War of the Lions version on a PSP emulator. Yeah, so a little while back, some months ago, I was playing Disgaea. I was playing the hell out of Disgaea 5 on Switch. I was really enjoying that, and I think I said at one point that I was interested in trying out Final Fantasy Tactics, because I've never really played it. Like, I've done the first couple fights or whatever a number of times when I was much younger, and I just wasn't good at it. And I watched my brother play it a lot, but I never really got into it, and Disgaea inspired me to finally give it a try, and I've been having a blast with it. I've been playing it every day this week, just all the time, really over-grinding everything, but I enjoy that. And yeah, it's great. It's really a fantastic game. It's kind of funny because, you know, everyone's talking about Mario Odyssey, which, you know, I enjoyed. I played it for, like, I want to say 4 days, something like that. I played it for, like, 4 days. I got, I want to say, like, 500 moons. It had to be somewhere around there. And then I was just like, alright, that's good. That's fine, and then I moved on to this, and I've already played it more than Super Mario Odyssey, so not to say one's better than the other, it's just this is what happens to appeal to me a bit more. Yeah, so it's been good. It's been all good. It's been all good. Alright, so this week on this channel, we had Skyrim and Middle-earth as expected. We also had a Dauntless video, which I'll talk about in a little bit, and we had Call of Cthulhu, as well as Funnel World, but I'll talk about that later. So, Middle-earth I've actually finished. I recorded parts 9 and 10 last night, and we wrapped up the game. Really a hilarious final boss battle, but I'm sure that's what you all expected. So you'll probably see the last part of that on Tuesday, I guess. And then Skyrim, I don't know. It's possible we'll also finish that this week. You never know. That'd be pretty good, but we'll see what happens. And then after that, we just kind of move into Skyward Sword, which I have a couple parts recorded. Yeah, so Dauntless, I played. Jin gave me a code. I want to say he gave me that code Thursday night, I believe. And I was pretty close a while back to buying one of the founder packages myself, and just getting into the beta that way, just because I really wanted to make a video and see how it was and talk about it. But I decided $40 just for beta access. That's... what kind of life am I living at that point? So I decided against it. But thanks to Jin, I finally got to play it and talk about it. And... yeah, it's certainly in rough shape, I would say. I could certainly see it appealing to some people. But it's like, I don't know. I feel like the concept of that style of game, the concept of Monster Hunter, if it appeals to you, that style, you're probably gonna just play a Monster Hunter game. Or the style doesn't appeal to you, in which case, I don't know if Dauntless is really like the gap, the bridge for the gap between a non-fan of Monster Hunter and a fan of Monster Hunter. It just seems like kind of a half-assed version of Monster Hunter to me. Things could change. They could work it out, and maybe it'll end up being really something stellar. Especially free to play, they could get a lot more people into the genre. I guess I don't know what genre it is, but for me at least, for someone that is a very big fan of Monster Hunter, the series, Dauntless doesn't seem to offer much to sway me over to keep playing it instead of Monster Hunter. But we'll see. Yeah. I guess that's about it. You can watch the video if you want to see the rest of my thoughts. Over on the Exploring series, on Monday I released the werewolves video for Halloween. It actually kind of blew up absolutely more than I thought it would. I was really shocked. It's very, very uncommon that something will get picked up for suggested videos on the day that I launch it. Generally, you know, if a video starts, like, not trending, it doesn't go to the trending section, but if it starts being recommended to people outside of my subscribers, it's usually like 3 or 4 days later, sometimes, you know, a week later, something like that, and then it will continue to be recommended here and there. Videos that never blow up like that, like they never get recommended, like in the first week, that probably means they'll never get recommended ever. But, you know, my Morgoth video, Cthulhu, Dwemer, those all videos, over time, here and there, they'll eventually continually get recommended from time to time. And I don't, you know, it just is what it is. So for werewolves to be recommended, or put on front page at least for some people, day one, was really shocking. Now, it didn't blow up like Dwemer blew up. It's at 39,000 right now, so close to 40,000, which is really good. That's by far the best among my non-series, I guess, videos, the history and mythology. And people seem to like it. They enjoyed it. I really like the art that I put in there, but I wasn't crazy about my content, which is, I guess generally I prefer it to be the other way around. Since the artwork, you know, obviously I don't really have much work involved with that. All my work is in the writing, and so if that's, but I mean, I guess it's like, that's probably partly why I think it's that way. You tend to be your own harshest critic, and so, yeah. Of course, I think all these other artists, all these other people doing this work is incredible, and mine is just, it's shitty. But People seem to like it, so that's good. And then this week I worked on the Orc video, which I think will... I actually didn't check compared to like the Elder Scrolls video, but it'll probably be among one of the shortest. There's really not that much to say about orcs, but, you know, we did what we did. And then we're gonna wrap up the rest of the races. We still have Altmer and Nords and Bretons. And then we'll move on to Daedric Princes. I think what I'm gonna do, my idea right now for Daedric Princes, since there's 16 of them, I'm gonna just lump them 4 into a video. So we'll do like Azura, Boethia, and whatever. I don't have them all memorized. So we'll just do 4, 4, 4, and 4. And like, that's the thing, right? It would be... There are things that I could do with the channel that I know would be more profitable to me and get more views, and I don't do them. Purely because of I think it's bad. I just don't like it. So for one, obviously I could do one video for each Daedric Prince, right? That would give me far more videos, far more views, so on and so forth. That's just how it is. The more videos out there, each one's going to get its own chunk of views. But I don't like that because some of those videos are going to be really short and just... I mean, yeah, you know, a person clicking on the video for Boethia is going to find out, you know, as much as I can tell you about Boethia, sure, and they're going to get exactly what they want out of it, which is often how I prefer to do it. You know, that's why I didn't lump any of the races together or anything, because I want people looking for orc information to find orc information. But when you're clicking on a video and you get 2.5 minutes of info, that's just, I don't know, because it's not, the goal of the channel is not purely to be educational. I also like to be entertaining as well, and so I think if you're going to click on a video, I just have that sweet spot between like 6 and 11 minutes that I like to hit, and so for some of the Daedric Princes I could probably do it if I stretch it out, but for others it would be really rough. So, yeah, we're just going to lump it into 4 tonight. The other thing that I could do is be far more clickbaity with things. You know, my Morgoth video, if I did like top 10 things you didn't know about the Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, or, you know, something like, I could, you know, all those clickbaity titles, I'm sure you're all familiar with it, across YouTube, you've seen plenty of this stuff. I could be way worse about it, but I just don't like that. I don't agree with it. And so, you know, it's an odd thing, because that is money that I'm turning down, but I guess you gotta have some integrity, right? So we'll see how it goes. I can't complain about view numbers. I'm doing pretty well. I think I'm at 86,000 subscribers, which is, yeah, it's the number that you always brag about. You always got to brag about subscriber numbers and things like that, because if you tell people, well, you know, I get 30,000 views a day, or I get 80,000 views a day. It's like, well, that's impressive. Oh yeah, but subscribers, it's most people seem to understand that a bit easier, without getting into like financial information or something. So you can just always say, oh yeah, I got this many subscribers. And they're like, wow, that's crazy, because they can understand that. But for me, at least, it's really kind of a meaningless number. But it seems like, unless something drastically strange happens, I should hit 100,000 in late January, early February, give or take. Give or take a month, I guess, on either side. And 100,000, that's really, like, aside from 1,000,000, that's about as good as a milestone as you're gonna reach, because you finally get a plaque. You get a plaque from YouTube. They ship it out to you. I don't know how long it takes. I assume it takes at least a few months to get to you, but you get a plaque with your YouTube channel name on it, and it's got this little silver play button and 100,000 subscribers, blah blah blah, and it's just like, holy shit, you know. That's no longer like this little tiny thing you've got going on. Like, that's a real accomplishment. So that'll be pretty cool. Yeah, that's how it goes. Alright, so board games. Yes. Yesterday we had a board game day. Really, it was a Cosmic Encounter day, because that's how we like to do things. We played 2 games of Cosmic Encounter. The same person won both games, which is pretty uncommon. Highly uncommon, actually. But they were highly entertaining games. Tom Vassell, you know, the founder of the Dice Tower, who I've met a couple times. He's signed my copy of Cosmic Encounter because he is the person that really introduced the game to me. He's had Cosmic Encounter as his #1 game for plenty of years, many years. He did his top 100 recently, and Cosmic Encounter was ousted. It was bumped back to #2 to be replaced by Gloomhaven, which is a new Euro-ish dungeon crawling, deck building, RPG type board game. I should get my copy sometime this month, I believe. So I'm pretty excited for that. I don't know if it'll replace Cosmic for me, but you know, I figured Tom Vassell loved Cosmic Encounter more than anybody, so who's to say? But anyways, so the first game, you know, we always pretty much play with hidden aliens now. Double aliens, one of them hidden, one of them public. Just because you get much more wild games of Cosmic. And really, when Cosmic is wild, when it's crazy, that's when it's at its best. When you've got all these crazy powers interacting and all these things that, you know, when you say during the game, like, wow, I never thought I'd see, I never thought that was possible, or blah blah blah, whatever. That's usually when Cosmic is at its best. And so the first game I had, gosh, what the fuck did I have? I had Fido and Crusher. That's what I had. So Crusher, basically, periodically, I'm capable of crushing opponents' stacks of ships. So if they have a stack of like 6 ships in the warp or something, you know, in the graveyard, I can crush it down, and so it only acts as a single ship instead of 6. So basically, they lose 5 ships semi-permanently, which is pretty crushing. And so I did that a few times. It wasn't a major deal, but I did it a few times. And Fido is a really simple power. I generally like to go for the crazier powers, but you know, you have to deal with what you're dealt. Fido, just anytime the encounter cards are discarded after an encounter, Fido takes one of them, offers it to another player. If they take it, I get to draw a card. If they don't take it, I get the card. So usually it's a chance to just draw a lot of cards, which is, yeah, sometimes nice. So I did not win that game. I lost that game for a really stupid reason. There was a flare card that I had been using here and there that when I was the main player, during the whole encounter, everybody around the table was required to say the word "Sir" anytime they opened their mouth at some point in their sentence. Otherwise, I could, if I wanted, remove one of their ships and send it to the warp. Obviously a pretty devastating thing, because anytime an ability lets you remove a ship of your choice anywhere on the galaxy, you can start removing people's foreign colonies, which is, you know, the win condition. So it can be very devastating if people are not prepared. So this one, people could actively prevent. You know, they could just say the word "sir" every time, but people slipped up, and one person did lose a foreign colony just because they slipped up a couple times, which is it's pretty rough. That's not something you want to have happen too often. And so I was enjoying that. I was having a fun time with that power, that ability. But later in the game, I lost that card. It went to somebody else. And during really like the final turn of the game, it seemed very like I had been, you know, cock blocked or colony blocked, however you want to talk about it. And it did not seem like I was not about to win. Somebody else was clearly about to win, and I was not in contention anymore. Which is really, you should never think this. I've played Cosmic plenty of times now, and yet that thought still creeps in, and it should not. You should always assume that there is a chance, no matter what. Because if I hadn't been stupid, I would have won as well. But here we are. And so, I didn't think I was in contention. But, pretty much it ended up that flare was played by someone else, and I was just running my mouth. So I lost a colony, and I was like, whatever. I'm not going to win. And it ended up being that I went along on offense for the last encounter, and he won. And me and Mert both lost a colony because we were just talking without saying "sir." And and so yeah, the guy ended up getting the solo win, assisted by me and Mert, because we had both just been talking too much without saying "sir," because we both didn't really. Actually, I think he just fucked up. I didn't care. He just fucked up because he's Mert. But yeah, it was dumb. It was dumb, but you know, I'm not huge on. I don't really care if I win or not. It's just I like the journey. The second game I had the Aristocrat and the Warrior. The Warrior is really pointless. Again, it's just you gotta play with what you're dealt, and it was really just nothing. I don't think it really influenced anything at all. But the Aristocrat was pretty fun. I like the Aristocrat because the Aristocrat you get to do this. You get to do this show with your whole family where you have sex with each other. And anyways, the the aristocrat, you get to pick your starting hand. You get to go, before the cards are dealt, you get to go through the entire deck, and you can pick your 8-card starting hand. That's nuts. Like, people could not believe that was a power. And really, that's not a huge deal. It's very nice, and when you start the game and you're just looking at this perfect hand, like it's like the equivalent of like a royal flush just being dealt to you. It's just perfect. Hand-picked. It's beautiful. I should have taken a picture of it so I can remember how beautiful it was. Because it would really almost never... You would never get that. That would be astronomical to get this combination of amazing cards in your opening hand. So that was very nice. Because you're definitely a threat in the early game, because people know you have the highest attack cards and the best flares and blah, blah, blah. Cosmic Zap, blah, blah, blah. But its other power is, whenever you're the main player, you can draw a flare from the unused flare deck. And the unused flare deck is like 180 cards or something like that. It is just this huge stack of fun cards. And so that's why I picked it, because it was like, oh, look at all this fun I can have. And I did have some fun. I didn't end up winning, because, you know, over time, the Uber hand does go away. You end up using all these cards, because anytime you have an encounter in the early parts of the game, you have to use one of your Uber cards. Even if it doesn't, this is not a battle you'd really want to use it, you're defending or whatever, these are the only encounter cards you have. You have to use the 30, you have to use the 40, and it's like, I'd rather not do this. I'd rather not use my morph on this as a negotiate, but alright. And so, yeah, it was a very fun game, but again, I lost. This was just due to... I don't know what it was due to. It was just kind of how it ended up. The same guy won both games, really, just because he... The second game, he honestly did not use his power, like, at all. He just sat there and things kind of fell into his lap, which is... an unusual circumstance, but it was funny. But yeah, it was pretty great. Cosmic is always great. Okay. Moving on to Call of Cthulhu. We had our second session for the Still Waters scenario for Call of Cthulhu with Sloopy Dunbar, Octavius Puss, and Hugo Mikhail or something like that in deep Louisiana. We had just spent the night at this spooky plantation where a couple murders had happened, and the police had showed up in the morning, and we were cleared of any sort of criminal wrongdoing because we had the guy that brought us there who had also found the bodies, fortunately. Otherwise, he would not have been able to corroborate our story. And so we found out that the Rosethorn family, or the Rosethorn estate, whatever, nearby, had some sort of connection with this man, or possibly with the murders. And so our goal was to go check out this Rosethorn Manor and try and figure out how they were connected to the murders, see if we could find any evidence, you know, just poke around. And so we went back into the little town, and we got a lift from the same guy. We got a lift from the same guy who brought us to the original manor, and we're like, you know, can you take us here? And he agreed. So we head out there to the Rosethorn place, And we're stopped at the front gate. That's a pretty good ability. We're stopped at the front gate by this really creepy groundskeeper. Not, you know, not like groundskeeper Willie, but like groundskeeper Lester. I apologize if your name is Lester. I apologize for your unfortunate name. And so the guy basically, we had to convince him that we were associates of the estate, of the family, and fortunately Thomas, Dr. Puss, had found a key in the manor that apparently was linked to this house, so it should work. And after a successful persuade roll, we managed to convince him that we were all on the level and all that. But then he says that he's going to have to... He has to go inside the house first to take inventory of whatever is there. Or something like that. That's what he said. So that, you know, if we broke or stole anything, he had a record of it. I did not believe this. Sloopy did not believe this. This seemed really fishy that he had to go inside the house first. It seemed like he was trying to hide something. And Sloopy just did not trust this guy, because I didn't trust this guy. Alright? He was just a shifty bastard. And so Sloopy clubbed him over the head with his baseball bat. Much to the surprise of the others. And I didn't kill him in the first hit, but I definitely smacked him good. And so he starts running, because he's unarmed apparently, so he just starts running down the road away from us. And I try to swing at him again as he's leaving. And of course I completely fuck up. I roll a 100, critical fail pretty much. And so basically I smack Hugo instead, the Russian. I smack him good, like hard, like 7 damage, like half his health pretty much. And of course it was a complete accident. You know, I rolled 100, but he's not having any of that. So he starts attacking me. He takes a swing at me with like his blackjack, and of course he misses. So I figure he's in league with this this creepy groundskeeper to murder me and my Uncle Puss. So I take another swing at him. Again, I just destroy his face, and so I kill him on my second hit. I rolled very well, which was pretty funny. And so now Uncle Puss has his Luger out. He's the only one with a pistol. This groundskeeper is running away like bloody. Hugo is dead with his skull caved in. And I'm just standing there like, shoot him, Uncle Puss, shoot him! And so he has to decide whether he shoots me or he shoots this groundskeeper. So of course he fires the shot and he shoots the groundskeeper, killing him. But the guy who brought us there in his carriage or whatever, his cart, he's not that far away. He had just kind of left. And so he heard the gunshot, and we could see him like starting to turn around his carriage. So Uncle Puss planted the gun on Hugo, and we said that Hugo went mad. He shot the groundskeeper, and so I had to club him to death. Now, when they inspect the body of the groundskeeper, they're going to find out, you know, there's a... He clearly suffered some blunt force trauma, but that's not really in Sloopy's mind. He's not thinking about that. And so I convinced, with a incredible persuade roll, I convinced this guy to not tell the police immediately, because, you know, we need to investigate this house to solve these murders. And so with police interference, you know, we just wouldn't be able to. So for the greater good, we need to stall off the police on this one. And so he agreed. Incredibly, he agreed. So we just leave these two bodies there, and we open the gate, and we go inside this mansion. And we find what we're looking for pretty quickly, in fact. It was like the first room that I went into was this sort of empty-looking study, and there was like some Latin writing on the wall, and there was a fireplace, and I could see there was a brick missing from inside the fireplace, and I could see there was a room behind it. And also inside the fireplace, resting against the inside of it, there was a tablet. And so written on the tablet was all sorts of some crazy Cthulhu Mythos stuff. And in fact, my Cthulhu Mythos score went up by 10 from reading this single tablet. Now, Cthulhu Mythos, the skill, is almost always completely worthless in a one-shot, because generally you have new characters, they start with 0 Cthulhu Mythos, and you're never going to gain that much to actually make a roll as successful. I mean, the odds of this are incredibly slim, and usually it won't matter because it's assumed that you don't know anything about the Cthulhu Mythos in a one-shot. And so... Well, that was interesting. I healed him because he's undead. That's cool. So that didn't really matter. But anyways, it had like Cthulhu, Fatan, blah, blah, blah. Sloopy don't give a shit about that. And so Sloopy decides that, you know, there's a room behind this fireplace. It has to be important. So he starts, like, basically trying to smash down the back of the fireplace with his bat, which... These were not loose bricks. Even though one was missing, they were not loose. And so this was more than he bargained for with his 8 strength. And so I got one more brick missing, but that was pretty much it. And Uncle Puss heard all this commotion. He came in to investigate. He tried to help out, but he's weaker than I am, so it just didn't really work. And so... We're just kind of sitting there, exhausted, catching our breath, blah, blah, blah. And Uncle Puss is examining the room. And he finds that one of the panels on the wall is a little funky. So he goes over to investigate, and he finds that there's actually a hidden door behind these panels. Haha! We are solving the mystery. And so we get the door open, and there are stairs leading downwards into a dark, dank cellar of some type. And So he goes, he wants his gun, so I go and grab his gun off of Hugo's body. And he's got like a flashlight. And he slowly starts to descend down these stairs into this really creepy cellar. And I say, I'm gonna be 10 steps behind him, because I don't want to be eaten. Like, I'm 10 steps behind him. And so he goes down here, I'm slowly following him from behind, and he reaches a landing, he reaches floor, and it's very dark down here, pitch black, so he's slowly just sort of waving his flashlight around, and he comes across a number of paintings of apparently former members of the Rosethorn family, and they slowly get creepier and creepier as they sort of, like, the people in the paintings, like, apparently formed like claws and like fishy extremities, and so we took some sanity loss because I'm still like on the stairs, and I'm like just like stooping my head down to look at this, and it's just like moist. It's moist down in this room. It's dark and moist, which is wonderful. And so, eventually, he continues to turn his flashlight around, and he sees, sitting at a piano, is a humanoid creature, I guess. It was clearly once human, but it has, like, claws and, like, face tentacles. It's like a mini Cthulhu. Clearly, it's some sort of Deep One type thing. But it can speak, and it speaks, you know, saying some creepy shit. I don't remember what it was, but you can imagine it was pretty creepy. And why are you? I guess it doesn't matter. And just as this thing starts to move towards Uncle Puss, and he's like backing up, another set of claws from behind him latches onto his shoulder, and it's like, "Where are you going?" And it's creepy. So he has like his Luger in his hand, so he tries to like fire behind him, and I think he does hit him, but it's a deep one. You're not going to kill it with a single shot from a Luger. And so at this point, I'm like, fuck this. So Sloopy races back upstairs. He kicks out the... The doors closed behind us when we went on the stairs, so we used some of the bricks from the fireplace to prop open the doors. So as soon as I got to the top, I kicked the bricks out so the doors would shut behind me. Because fuck that. Uncle Puss is dead, and I'm not letting these things get me. So Sloopy just sprinted out of the house, down the road as far as he could go, straight to the train station, so he could take his briefcase with his $1,000 and just get the hell out of Louisiana, never to return. And so, of course, Uncle Puss was, they cast some spell on him that, like, you know, drained his energy, and he was put at like this dining room table with some other dead people there, and he tried a last-ditch effort to, like, say, you know, the groundskeeper or whatever is dead, so you're gonna need somebody to bring you food. And they're just like, oh, that's clever of you, and then they plucked out his eyeballs and he died. So that was pleasant, but Sloopy survived. Sloopy Dunbar survived, the only one. He's got $1,000, which is way more than he was going to get paid for actually completing the job. I think Sloopy won Call of Cthulhu, as far as I'm concerned. That was best case scenario. He still's got plenty of sanity. $1,000? What more do you want? I think he did great. Yeah, you have to be cowardly, and yeah, you might have to bash one of your friends' faces in with a baseball bat, but, you know, success requires sacrifice. So all in all, pretty good Call of Cthulhu one-shot. Can't complain. Can't complain too much. Yeah, so then we moved straight into, and again, I kind of thought maybe I should just stop the stream here and make a new one right away, but it was like, when you're just in the flow of things, it's whatever. I didn't want to stop the whole thing and tell the guys, no, wait, don't start, you know, we can't make your characters, yeah, we gotta wait for this stream to start, and blah, blah, blah. It was just like, whatever, we'll just keep going. If these videos were far more popular, I would probably care a bit more, but I figure the people on this channel that are watching Roll Manging, they're probably just watching all of them. That's my assumption. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's what I'm going to assume. So I think they get the gist of things. So we moved right into Funnel World. I should probably just talk. So Funnel World. Funnel World is it's not a variant of Dungeon World. It's really like a prelude to Dungeon World. It's meant to kick off Dungeon World, letting you play as level 0 characters instead of starting at level 1. I've already talked about this. And so I was running it's a scenario that's designed for Dungeon Crawl Classics. Instead of Dungeon World. Dungeon Crawl Classic is basically a system designed to replicate and improve upon old school D&D, like real old school D&D, but with sort of some more modern sensibilities. I don't really have a lot of interest in actually playing it, just because I prefer the more narrative RPGs nowadays instead of old school stat, min-max, all that kind of stuff. But Dungeon Crawl Classics does have a lot of scenarios that are designed for level 0 characters. And Dungeon World, you know, it's very easy to convert something over to Dungeon World since you just strip out all the stats and stuff like that and you just run the narrative. And so this scenario is called Legends Are Made, Not Born. And it basically involves this ogre that has kidnapped a couple of townsfolk from this nearby village. Small little farming village. And a bunch of villagers, level 0 villagers, commoners, you know, farmers, bakers, smiths, rat catchers, hunters, whatever. They have gathered together to go and take back these townsfolk and slay the ogre. If they can. And they find a lot more than they bargained for in this ogre's cave. But we'll get to that next week. So we started out with character creation. Character creation for Funnel World. You can, if you want, you can put in some of your own. It doesn't have to be entirely random, but I was like, no, we're doing this since it's a one-shot. Most likely, we might continue later on. In which case, if people really want to change their names or something, whatever. But for this, entirely random, 100%. They have no control over these characters during creation. It's just roll the dice, see what you get. So that means for each attribute, strength, int, charisma, dex, wisdom. I probably forgot something. Strength, dex, int, wisdom, charisma. What the fuck? Why do I think there's one more? There has to be one more. Strength. Oh, Constitution. Of course, the dump stat. I always forget about Constitution. I was like, there has to be another physical one, but... yeah, so all 6 of those attributes are entirely random with 3d6. That's an old school thing. Old school D&D and stuff, you just roll 3d6 down the row, and whatever you got is whatever you got. Later games introduce the concept of the most common is 4d6, drop the lowest one. So you'd roll 4 d6s, whichever is the lowest number, you would forget that, and you'd take the 3 highest numbers. And, you know, you can look at charts for averages and all that kind of things, and you can see the differences between 3d6 and 4d6 drop lowest, and there are some other ones that are less common that you can find. But for this, it's meant to be old school. Like, here you go. For 3d6, you have like the highest percentage chance of getting a 10 or 11, whereas 4d6 drop lowest, you have the highest chance of getting a 13. So it just sort of bumps up all the probabilities and numbers and stuff like that towards the mid and higher range, and you're less likely to get 11 and lower. So it just makes it numbers higher. And recently, I've just been a huge proponent. I've finally switched over to Spoonie's mentality that just randomly generated attribute numbers is really just the better way to go. And I think Funnel World is a great way of displaying it. Your stats don't really matter in a lot of games. There are some games where it's designed for you to have a high number for a specific attribute or something like that. But a lot of times it really just comes down to, your decision-making skills and things like that, rather than just, I have 18s in every stat. Generally, that's just a very small difference, I mean, if you look at averages over time for dice rolls, Dungeons and Dragons, yeah, if you have 18s in all stats versus 10 in all stats, yeah, you're going to succeed on a lot more dice rolls. Sure. And if you're going for min-max and you're playing it like a board game and you want to always succeed as often as possible, sure, you probably care about having high stats. But for me, that's not important. That is not important to me. It used to be. When I first got into D&D, yeah, absolutely. Rolling 18s for stat, hell yeah, it was awesome. But for now, yeah, I'm perfectly fine having 10s and everything. I've played a commoner with 10s and everything, and it's just... It comes down to more than that, more than just stats for me. So anyways... So yeah, they each got 3 villagers for 9 total. And if they lose all 3 villagers, they will get a 4th one. Nobody lost all 3 in the first part of the scenario so far. I'm sure they will. And we got a pretty good, entertaining gamut of characters, I guess. We got, let's see. We got a forager, a trapper, a rat catcher, a hunter, a noble, a butcher, a bower. Probably some other stuff that I'm forgetting. Oh, a laundress, a male laundress with like 3 charisma. That's a pretty funny one. So all the attributes randomly generated, occupations randomly generated, names and genders randomly generated. Physical traits randomly generated, personality traits randomly generated. We ended up with 5 males and 4 females, so fairly even as you're going to get out of 9. And yeah, the noble was actually, that was one of Ziggy's characters, his first character. That was going to be the star of the show, apparently, because this was, she was a female noble living in this village. We also randomly rolled bonds between all the characters, so it ended up that she actually owned the dwarf character as a slave. She had just recently purchased her from this village. But she was a female noble with really high stats. Like, better than any other character rolled. And she was a noble, so she started with a longsword, which is really like the only proper weapon in the whole group. And weapons in Dungeon World don't mean as much, since every villager is rolling a d4 for their damage. But narratively, a longsword is better than a little club, most of the time. But as it turns out, the noble was not the star of the show. And so Ziggy pretty much put it on himself to lead the group. Lead this group of 9 villagers into the cave to kill the ogre. And Ziggy, as we found out later, fundamentally misunderstood the purpose of Funnel World. He thought the purpose was to die. I have no idea why he thought this, because what would be the point of even playing if your purpose is just to die as quickly as possible? I honestly have no idea. But he says that he put no thought into clever or strategic tactics of any type. And I'm just like, that's absolutely ridiculous. The purpose is to survive. You completely converted and twisted the purpose of the scenario. The purpose is to survive as cleverly and strategically as possible. The point is that you have shit stats, you have shit gear, you have no abilities, and yet you have to do an adventure designed for adventurers. Pretty much. I mean, you could do this same adventure with level 1 characters and just run it the exact same way. From my end, pretty much. But for them, they do not have all that special stuff. They are completely average, and yet they must succeed because of their clever tactics. So that really fucked them over for the first half, the first quarter, really. We'll see how this new perspective changes with the next session, but pretty much they avoided doing anything in town. They didn't prepare anything. They didn't buy any supplies, didn't buy any weapons. They didn't talk to anybody to get info or just nothing. They just headed straight for the cave. They marched straight to the cave. They didn't look around the cave. I tried to give them some hints. They could hear sheep nearby. There were hoof prints. They even found an animal enclosure, but they did not go and find out these, I guess it just didn't occur to them that somebody was looking after these sheep, even though they found like a little residence inside the cave with nobody in it. You'd think they would have put 2 and 2 together, that whoever is in charge of this is in charge of the sheep. But they did not think about anything. They just continued to march through. They encountered a wolf that was on like a chain. And so the only guy with the ranged weapon, the only guy with a bow, tried to shoot the wolf, but he failed miserably. So the chain snapped, and the wolf mauled, I think, at least one person. But their real problem was their insistence on fighting as a group in a narrow corridor. And multiple people died because of them fighting together in this very narrow corridor. And Phil even brought this up during the thing. He's like, we're literally doing the opposite of what we should be doing, When you think of like 300, the Spartans, they had a small number of warriors, of combatants, and yet they were able to fend off a much larger force due to the narrow corridor. That's ideal for the smaller force. And so they were doing the opposite of that. They were the much larger force, trying to attack and overwhelm an opponent, a single opponent, a much smaller force, in a narrow corridor. And so they failed rolls. Failed rolls happen, and it's like, well, you're swinging, like, literally, you're swinging an axe, like a wood axe. You're swinging that in a corridor like 6 feet wide with 3 people around you, and you're missing. It's like, what do you think is going to happen here? Especially when these characters only have like 2 HP. That was the average, was 2 HP. I think one person had 1. I think one person had 3. Maybe 2 people had 3. But overall, it was 2 HP. And they're rolling D4 for damage. So odds are pretty good that if you hit somebody, they are dead. And so yeah, multiple people were killed by friendly fire. The wolf was eventually put down, but I think they lost... I want to say they lost 2 or 3 people there. Maybe 2. I think one of Phil's died. The forager, the little gnome guy died, and I think one of Thomas's characters died. But they killed the wolf, and I was rolling for the ogre to see if he heard the commotion, but he did not. He was still sleeping, and so they marched forward. And I'm like, all right, who's in front? Who's leading? And they had lost their scout, I think. So they decided to send the goat herder. That was the other character. They decided to send the goat herder up front. And with the goat herder, keep in mind, there were 9 people in this corridor, along with 3 goats. Okay, so the goat herder is always with his 3 goats. And he's leading the charge here. He's scouting out. And I'm like, okay, now, are you in front or are your goats in front? This is an important question for what's about to happen. And he's like, well, I guess I'll put my goats in front. And I was like, I couldn't hide it. I was like, you're going to regret that in a second. But he said it, so his goats are in front. I had him roll to see if he noticed the tripwire. And he rolled like a 7, so I was like, okay. If he had failed completely, he would not have noticed the tripwire at all, and he would have just been caught in the thing. And if he had succeeded, if he had rolled 10 or higher, he would have noticed the tripwire before the goats hit it. But with a 7, I'm like, all right, you notice it just as one of your goats hits the tripwire. What do you do? And it's like, maybe if he had yanked the goat, if he probably would have had to make another roll. If he had yanked the goat back physically and pulled him away from the tripwire, he probably could have prevented it from happening. But what he did was the worst. He like shouted out. He's like, "Ah!" Which of course scared the goat. And he like leaped away. Tripwire was being cut. It was happening. And the tripwire was connected to a collection of spiked logs, like hanging from the ceiling or up against a wall or something like that. And so they like let out a board or something like that, and all these logs were coming down. All the goats were instantly obliterated. Like, just no chance. No chance. Somebody would have had to have saved him, and he was trying to save himself. So I'm like, all right, roll to dive away. He did not. So he got crushed instantly as well. So just like, it was like a Final Destination, just blood splatter everywhere. Really horrific. And making a tremendous amount of noise. And so I rolled, and the ogre had woken up. They did not realize this immediately. But they had lost another villager. They had lost another friend, I guess. And so they continued. They climbed over the logs, and one of Ziggy's characters was in the lead, and Pierce Brosnan. And he looks around the corner, and he sees the ogre walking down the corridor towards them, stomping on the ground. And so he quickly whips around out of view. He doesn't get spotted. And so they have a very short amount of time here to decide what to do. And so Ziggy's plan was to light the logs on fire to try and smoke the ogre out. Which, if the ogre had not been woken up, this was a it wouldn't have worked due to, again, them not properly scouting out the cave. There was in fact a chimney, like a natural chimney in the cave right above the ogre that led outside, so the smoke would not have accumulated in his cave. And in fact, they could have gone outside and used that chimney to get inside right above the ogre if they had wanted, but they did not look at anything. So anyways, they had very little time to light this fire. They had no kindling, they had no accelerant, you know, they had no oil or anything like that. They were completely unprepared, and they were paying for it. So they actually did light one of the logs on fire, but it just wasn't... He was on his way. They had like 10 seconds. This log was not going to erupt into flame. That's not how fire really works. So the ogre comes into view, sees these like 6 people there or whatever, and he's angry. So he goes to try and pick up this flaming log, because he's just going to like throw it at them and just kill all of them in one go. And they're like, oh shit. They did not think about an ogre picking up a log. So they begin their attack. They decide, alright, we're just going to attack them. And once again, they're in a fairly narrow corridor. And they're using like ranged weapons. So they're trying to hit this ogre with ranged weapons while all their friends are in front of them trying to attack it with axes and swords. It does not go well, I'm afraid. They do end up killing the ogre, but they are down to 4 characters, I believe, at the end of this. One of them gets their head chopped off with an axe, and one of them takes a sickle to the back of the brain. One of them, I think, gets backhanded by the ogre or something. I think, like, they kill each other far more than the ogre did, pretty much. It was kind of a bloodbath. But they do end up killing the ogre, and they thought they were done. They were like, all right, cut off the ogre's head. We're done. We won. It was like you've been playing for like 40 minutes. That's not a scenario, because they were sent here to kill the ogre and rescue the townsfolk that the ogre had kidnapped, and they had not done that yet. That's where we ended, however, with 4 of them left alive and about 75% of the scenario left to go. It's gonna be rough. They're gonna have to get real fucking smart real quick. Keep in mind they each have another villager in the wings left to be created, if need be. So technically they have 7 lives left, but still, it's gonna be rough. They're gonna have to be way more clever than they have been, and I think if they had a do-over, things would have been very different, but that's life. They are commoners trying to do something extraordinary. So if any do end up surviving, it will be impressive. But we'll see how it goes. It was pretty fun. It was very fun to run. Because, you know, death is going to happen. They have 2 HP. They have no abilities. They're going to fuck up, and it's going to be funny. We had plenty of laughs in our short time playing. But we'll pick that back up on, like, Thursday. Or Wednesday. I guess that's about it. Last couple things I want to mention. I saw Jigsaw and Thor this week. Jigsaw was far better. No, I'm just kidding. You know, I've been a fan of the Saw series since Saw 2. Actually, I don't know. Saw 3 might have been the first one I saw in theaters. Well, I've been a fan since the first one. I guess I rented the first 2 and I saw the third one in theaters. But every other one I've seen in theaters. And I've watched them a few times all the way through. And, you know, people that are not fans of the series or don't know much about it, they just say that it's just hours of people being tortured. You know, it's just people being gruesomely tortured, and who could watch such thing? It's just horrible torture. It's not. If the Saw series was just torture, it would be very different. It would be a very different series. The Saw series is sort of half of somewhat Rube Goldbergian devices that are sort of meant to kill people, but sometimes there's a way out. And then the other half is sort of a police drama mystery type thing. And in some of the Saw movies, the police part is pretty good. Like in the first Saw movie, the police part is pretty good. Because that's how you learn much more about Jigsaw, is through, you know, Danny Glover and stuff like that, and it feels very, it fits in very well with the slow moving main trap part of the film. The second film, the police, is pretty interesting because it's very connected with the trap portion of the film, you know. Donnie Wahlberg's son is involved in the trap, and he is observing his son's presence in the trap, and it's very connected. And you know, the second one has Jigsaw himself with the police, and that adds a very entertaining, interesting aspect as well. The rest of the Saw movies, the police parts have generally been just, well, shit. Just way overused, too convoluted. They try to incorporate the twist aspect into way too much of the police portion, and it just gets, the Saw series just really went way too much with this whole convoluted plot line that almost entirely in the sake of, we want to have a crazy twist, because the first one has a crazy twist, the second one has a crazy twist, and they're just like, well, we have to keep going. We have to keep having these crazy twists. And they couldn't think of really ways to do this in the sake of the trap. The third one had a good one that was in the sake of the trap. But they're just like, oh, we don't know how to do this continually with a twist within the trap or any related to the trap. So, okay, we'll just have a twist with the police and with you know, the police internal involvements with the Jigsaw case, and oh, this guy's the apprentice, and oh, secretly, and you didn't know this, and oh, this is the twist that oh, this was going on, and blah blah blah, and it's just, it gets way too convoluted and blah blah blah. Jigsaw, I think some fans, including myself, hope that they would really sort of bring a new angle to the Saw series. Like, they have pretty much a fresh start. It's been years since the last one. They can sort of start off on a fresh slate, and they can do whatever they want. The problem is they get way too ingratiated with the other films. They continually want to involve the concept, and at the same time not involving any of the same films. It's really weird. It's at the same time, like, they're just copying, like, from, they just put, like, elements of Saw into a machine, and it just spurted out, like, the same thing. But at the same time, they have, like, no real concern for any of the plot elements from any of the previous films. None of the characters are really talked about at all. And it's like, okay, they wipe their hands of that, which is probably for the best. But at the same time, they just repeat all the same mistakes. They went for a much lighter tone for the film. They try to go for a brighter feeling to the whole film rather than dark and gringy, which for me was a negative. That was one of the parts I preferred about the Saw films, was they were really dark and gritty, and when you're watching it, you feel like you're watching something wrong. You know, like you have that sort of wrongness to it that's horror. You know, that's part of the horror, is it's so dark and gringy and just ugh. When you put brightness into it and you try to go for a slightly, not a happier tone, but it feels like more of a, I don't know, like an MTV film tone. I don't know. I just don't care for that. I don't need that. I like the dark and gritty, but other people disagree. They preferred it. The deaths were wimpy. They pulled a lot of punches, I thought. This was not a film where I was wincing or anything like, oh, that looks really fucked up and painful. They really just sort of wussed out, which, again, maybe I'm sadistic, but that's part of why people like the Saw films, is like, look at these insanely, you know, crazy traps, and it's just like, oh my god, that's horrible. That's horror. This did not really feel like that much of a horror film to me. Traps themselves were pretty stupid. There were a lot of, like, sort of rehashes from, like, Saw 5 and some of the other Saw films is just, yeah, I thought it was okay. It was not the worst Saw film, but that's really only because some of the Saw films are really pretty just shit. It was not like this incredible return to form that a lot of Saw fans wanted. It kind of felt like just more of the same convoluted bullshit. So, a little disappointing, but I don't think there'll be another one, but you never know. Thor, I'm way over my number here, so I don't want to talk too much about Thor. Bottom line, if you like comic book films at all, ever, go see it. It is in my top 3 of comic book films. It's probably, definitely the funniest film to date of Marvel's. The Hulk is a fucking badass, which, you know, the Hulk is right behind the Flash for me as a comic book hero, superhero, so I was a big fan of that. Very funny, very entertaining, just a fun movie. Now, that doesn't appeal to everybody, and at some point, I wouldn't mind Marvel taking a more serious approach to something. They've sort of dipped into that here and there. This is definitely on the fun Guardians of the Galaxy type spectrum, though. This is way over on that side. So if you're looking for something really serious, that is not Thor Ragnarok, despite being about the end of the world or whatever. The end of Asgard, at least. And I guess in Marvel, Ragnarok is only to Asgard, whereas in Norse mythology, Ragnarok is for Asgard and Midgard. But it's like a rebirth rather than just destruction. Anyways, it's good. It's fantastic. So that's that. All right. So Skyrim, Middle-earth this week. Check out the Orcs video on the Exploring series. My name is Mangg. This has been Hanging with Mangg. And I'll see you fine folks next week.